Making sure everything is up and running. Hello, hello, beautiful peace lovers, peacemakers. Welcome to Peace Mindedly, a podcast show featuring peaceful bridge makers. This is season 5 on Peace Mindedly, and I'm Sara Jamshidi, your host today. Our conversation today is going to be about learning Arabic and learning this beautiful language. I can assure you that learning Arabic is not way or more difficult than learning English because I can tell you. So back in Iran when I was growing up, I mean, started at the elementary all the way to high school, I learned Arabic, and it was a beautiful language. So in the process of learning Arabic, what I learned is that if I know some of the roots in Arabic, I actually can build words. I have an example for you. The word asab. So I learned that they are we are going to talk in more details with our guests today. But my understanding was, let's say we know these few roots of afal and ifta'al and fi'l, and then we have the verb asab or nerve asab. So therefore we can build according to those systematic structures and create asab and etisab. So these are the basics that we learned for Arabic and for Arabic language. But here for this show we are gonna deep dive into, so what are the structures, and how we are what are the better ways to learn Arabic language. Rooted in the Body, Arabic Metaphor and Morphology is a book by Lisa White, illustrated by Mahmoud Shaltut. Lisa White was a senior instructor in Arabic language and former executive director of CASA, Center for Arabic Study Abroad. Lisa knows Arabic language, understands Arab society. She has an intimate knowledge of the culture. She explains, she can explain variations of words in Arabic to make us understand this very complex and beautiful language. For us here, I do have Lisa White. Hello, Lisa.
Hello, nice to be with you.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much for being our honored guest. So, Lisa, I mean, I'm just curious to know what happened. What happened that you decided to write this amazing, interesting book?
Well, I think I can say that it's been a journey. So, Rooted in the Body is the product of my lifelong fascination with languages in general and with Arabic in particular. And it's also the product of my collaboration with Egyptian comic artist and professor of public health, Mahmoud Shaltut. So after studying Arabic in the United States and France and Egypt, I began teaching it at the American University in Cairo. And 40 years, this June actually, 40 years of living and working in Egypt has been a cultural apprenticeship as well. The reason actually what brought Rooted in the Body into being was that I wanted to help my adult students understand Arabic structure more quickly and easily than I had, and also to learn and retain vocabulary more efficiently. So Arabic has a very big vocabulary. It's really impressive. And when you're learning as an adult, it takes extra effort to upload this vocabulary, okay? So when I became aware of the surprising prevalence of the body in Arabic vocabulary and in a lot of derivatives, I understood that it would be a really good teaching strategy. So that's what's behind the book.
Mm-hmm. So, Lisa, I come to you and I tell you, Can you please explain me what it means? What is womb? And how we or rahim, and how we talk about. So there is a, if I can show you, so how what would you explain?
Yes, الرحم, the womb, is a very surprising piece of vocabulary, actually. As an adult learner, we don't learn this word first. What we learn is rahma, perhaps mercy, or Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. These are derivatives of this ra, ha, mim root, okay, which is all about mercy. But when you think about it, what is this saying about the womb? It's saying that there is no more merciful place in the body than that home of the baby in gestation. So the mother's body, and specifically the womb, is wonderfully merciful. And if you understand that the basic, that rahim, the physical body part, is behind all of that other amazing vocabulary, it really, you see the metaphor that is at work there. And it would be very sad to miss that, So ar-Rahm is, of course, not the most common piece of vocabulary, but it's the kind of thing that when you see the body, this is body part, and you see the various and sundry derivatives that come from it, like al-marhum. We say of someone who has died, as in English, the dear departed, or yes, that person whom we have lost. And when we call that person al-marhum, it is to say that we hope God will have mercy on that person. And so that pattern, which is maf'ul, means that someone else did it, you see? And so the idea is that Allah yarham, may God have mercy on al-marhum, who cannot do it himself. But all of it is coming from the source. The real source is the womb, which is a wonderfully merciful place. So that's the metaphor that's attached to a physical body part.
That's amazing. Very quickly, I want to show you the page, and then I come back for the next question. So when Lisa was explaining, I just wanted to show you what's happening in the book. If you have the book, so here's what's happening. So we have a beautiful illustration of what is rahim, or womb, and then we have an essay, basically investigative reporting essay about rahim, and all of the other words that comes out of rahim, and then the meanings that Lisa just beautifully explained. We have many other, if I can just very quickly show here, if we can talk about asab, right? So again, it's the beautiful illustration on one page, and on the other page there is this essay about the word. What can you tell us about asab, or nerve?
So, asab is the source. It just means a nerve in the body, any nerve. And you can modify asab with a nisba adjective. This is and we get asabi. Asabi means not nervous, as in English. English from nerve gives you nervous, as I might be. Asabi, though, means high-strung, easily angered, quick to lose the temper. And the idea behind this is multifaceted. So ta'assaba is to become short-tempered and yes, not asabi exactly, but ta'assub is to become something of a fanatic, and you can be muta'assib, fanatical, clinging to your opinions. And the neat thing is that asaba also means to wind something around your head like a cloth. And this tight thing around your head, might make you asabi. The idea of there is an idea of tying something tightly and then being high strung and quick to being irritable, and then from there on to these other aspects of short-temperedness.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Lisa.
Sorry, and there's another one, Isaba. Isaba is a gang. And there is a Quranic connection actually with Usba, which is a group of male relatives. And it's almost as if Arabic is telling you that a bunch of male relatives might be not the most relaxed and whatever, but there might be this feature of temperament. Mm-hmm. And there's in the story of Yusuf in the Quran, we have Usba, the Yusuf's brothers, who were jealous of him and had made up a plan to get rid of him, actually, because they wanted their father's attention. So it's this idea of a group of male relatives and being high-strung and being temperamental and perhaps fanatic.
Excellent. Awesome. So, Lisa, I wonder, what is the major differences between Arabic grammar and English grammar? Is there, like, when we think about that, is there major differences?
Yes, yes, of course there are. So there are different language families, and Arabic is from the Semitic branch of languages. So we can expect a different structure. So structure and grammar are not quite the same thing. But what I'm particularly interested in is the structure of the language. And especially about how roots are so powerful in Arabic. So English has roots too, but it's a bit different and not as pervasive as in Arabic. So one root in Arabic, you get a lot of mileage out of a root in Arabic, and especially out of body roots, because they're so old and they are primal. They are expressing things language which has been around from the dawn of time. And so they are loaded with psychic power and also with cultural power. They've been around for so long that we find lots of things like whatever, Ain and Udhun and Sadr and whatever in the Quran, and also in modern journalism or in medieval poetry. This kind of language of the body, doesn't expire. It's very old and very culturally hefty, and sometimes very funny. It's wonderful, really, to
structure in language.
So Indo-European, and then so they branch out, and then so we have things coming from Latin through Latin and Italian and French and stuff, and then we have English also has input from German. So English is a bit they're made up of layers. There are lots of things in there, influences, that is. But Latin and Greek, in Indo-European family, we get input from Greek and from Latin, and then also from German too.
But Semitic is different, so it's a different setup.
Yes, yes. So Arabic and Hebrew are very closely related, and it's a different family. So one can expect a different way of ordering one's vision of things, as one would expect it in Chinese, for example. Who knows? But they had an independent development, and so another way of expressing things. But
Way of
it's accessible to us because, especially if you learn how to use the morphology, because it's extremely regular. The wonderful thing about Arabic is that the structure with root X and then the words that could come from it is highly regular. And so you can make educated guesses in Arabic if you have a good introduction to the roots and patterns. And that's what the body is for.
Exactly.
And it's also to amuse you. It's also to amuse you because you can take it in a lighthearted way with their illustrations, and there's lots of pop culture thrown in, and there's cultural references to things from Western culture that a student who doesn't know Arabic yet would like to see. I mean, something that I'm not familiar when I don't know Arabic and I don't know so much about Arab culture. It's nice to have other cultural items thrown in, and so that we have in the illustrations things from Egyptian pop culture, but also from British pop culture. So there are a couple of Beatles in the illustrations, and there are Angela Davis in an illustration, and so forth.
So how did you choose? I mean, you and Mahmoud. So how did you choose of, okay, this is the kind of illustration that we want to portray for this word or this set of words? How did you choose?
So, well, the vocabulary itself does a lot of the choosing. So if you have, for example, head, and the vocabulary derived from head would be president, rais, and raisi, principal, and riasa, presidency, and rasmaliya, capitalism. So this vocabulary will suggest that you perhaps illustrate it with a president, or in our case, Karl Marx. So Karl Marx being the symbol of capitalism for many Westerners. So his illustration is there. So depending on we made the illustration go with the vocabulary whenever possible. And then there is also room for elaboration. There are some vocabulary needs a context, and in this, some of the items I suggested to Mahmoud, and some of it I left to his inspiration, because he is coming from a multicultural background, and just the sort of person who might choose wisely.
So did you have disagreements over what to do?
No, we did not actually, which is rather surprising for a 3-year collaboration. One would think but it was quite a smooth process, really. And in any case, uh, at first, before I became acquainted with Mahmoud, I used some illustrations from the net for my students, but I didn't have, of course, I didn't have copyright privileges, and so I could only make, 5 or 6 copies for the students of a class. I couldn't use the illustrations that I found on the net, and I wasn't always satisfied with them anyway. But I gave those illustrations, had a little ebook of them, if you will, and I gave them to Mahmoud to look at and use when he could, something on the same, along the same lines. And then for the rest, he was free to make a choice. He would do the drawings in pencil and bring them to me. And I would look and say, oh, I like this, I like this, I like this. I'm not so sure about that item. Could you think of something else? Could we include, if I had a specific recommendation, I would make it. Otherwise, I might ask him to choose something else. And he was very good natured about it and did that. So it went quite smoothly with us.
Excellent, excellent. So I'm going to come back in a few minutes. Stay put, please. You are watching and listening to Peace Mindedly, a podcast featuring peaceful bridge makers. We are on season 5 on Peace Mindedly, and we are a range of guests and topics that we are discussing for this season. For this season, we've been talking with chefs, activists, scholars, filmmakers, and people like on a various subjects such as Mediterranean food, patriarchy in Islam, and also halal travels. If you to know about our programs and to know about what we are up for and what we are doing, please visit goldtoon.com. When you go there under Peace Mindedly podcast, you can find many of these stories that is been posted there. You'll find our wonderfully informative conversations with Ofoq Sechin, with Ziba Mir Hosseini, Yasmin and Shwekar Al Ghorabli, and much more. So I do encourage you to visit goldtoon.com and Peace Mindedly podcast page. For this hour, we are talking with Lisa White, author of Rooted in the Body. Lisa is a linguist with a vast knowledge of Arabic language. She is based in Cairo and has taught at American University in Cairo for over 30 years. Okay, Lisa, so I would like to know, when we learn a new language, what do we learn?
Ah, yes. So it depends, I guess, where we learn it, and it depends a bit on our teachers. But I guess you can say that at first, in learning a language, the most practical thing one needs to do is meet and greet people. So, of course, there are some basics that in any language one would hope to be able to do, to manage survival, right? That kind of thing. But especially at first, meeting and greeting. Who are you? Who am I? What do you do? What do I do? And so forth. So that at first. But as you move on and you cannot separate language from culture. They are wrapped up in one. There is no culture, I think, without language, and very little language without culture, right? So even to say assalamu alaikum, there's a long cultural history behind that, and the more you understand, the better. At first, of course, baby steps, and then as soon as you can, you move on to use that culture to make the language that you produce more meaningful.
Mhm. Lisa, what happened? Why you got interested in Arabic?
Mm. Okay, well, so I love languages. I thought I just was intrigued. The first one that I took was Latin. In fact, in Latin, there was really no meeting and greeting that I recall. It was, hic, haec, hoc, and so forth. It was very grammar based and whatever. But I still loved it, even though it was, a dead language, because it's so helpful in understanding where English roots are coming from. So that for me was very intriguing, and it ended up being a really nice foundation for me going forward linguistically. Latin has all these fancy cases, so you have, and Arabic has it, and the German has that. So it ended up being exposed to that first, made the others seem easier. I think so. Anyway, I got started on by Latin, and then French and Spanish in high school, and I just enjoyed the discovery process, and I think I'm someone who likes puzzles, and so learning a language felt a bit like working on a puzzle, but just nicer. It's more delicious, I guess I can say, and I did a bunch of Indo-European languages for briefly in college, and I was really very curious about what if I got outside of that language family. I wanted to see something that wasn't coming from that old, Greco-Roman, whatever, the Indo-European branch. And I didn't think my ear was good enough to try something like Chinese. And I'm also not good with a different alphabet is hard enough for me, but to have ideograms, I thought it's just, I'm going to fail if I go there. So I thought some more, and I thought, okay, maybe I'll do Hebrew. And I signed up for it. And then I was going on a spring term abroad in France. So I had to sign up early for the following senior year of courses. And I went to France, and whom did I meet in France, of course, but many, many, many North Africans, which was Arabic. And it hadn't occurred to me before that I could also do Arabic. So when I went back to Penn State, where I was studying, I asked, would it be possible for me, do you have Arabic? Do you teach Arabic here? And they said, well, yes, we do, but only 1 year. And it was my senior year, it was my last year, and I said, fine, that's fine, I'll do Arabic. And I just loved it. I just loved it, and knew, within a couple of months of beginning, I knew that was where I wanted to go, that it was endlessly fascinating, and it was the cat's meow, so to speak. For me, it was something I wanted to pursue, and from that time, that was in 1975, and I never looked back until.
Sure. What fascinated you about Arabic? Do you remember?
Yes. First of all, I couldn't believe that it was written from right to left. I thought, oh, so strange.
Yeah.
The script is beautiful. The Arabic script is just beautiful. And I thought, well, if I could ever learn it, wouldn't that be fun? Then it was. So that's how I started, with a fascination with the script. And I was also annoyed at myself for never having considered it in the first place, and just sort of gone to, what's other than Chinese and Japanese and Vietnamese, what could I do that outside of, and to only come up with Hebrew. And I thought, why? Why not? Why not go to Arabic and see what's there? And I was so pleased to land there. Really, it
Yes,
was
have
very.
a silly question. That is usually I've heard and I've encountered when people are saying, for instance, when I'm speaking in English, it's more of a, of course, we have ups and downs when we are speaking, but more of a neutral. And I've heard people say that when I hear Arabic, it's more masculine, it's more forceful language. And then I've heard people saying that when they hear Farsi and French, is more feminine, like is more soft language. So I'm just wondering to see, is this the kind of, I mean, how do you feel when you speak
Hmm.
Arabic and when you speak English?
Hmm. So Arabic is a really interesting thing about Arabic is that there is a formal language used in writing and for very formal speech on television, the news, something like that. And then there are the colloquial languages that people speak at home, and it's not monolithic. In fact, even within one country, there are various pronunciations and so forth. So Moroccans sound very, very different from Egyptians, and Egyptians sound quite different from Somalis and so forth. Where when you go from, so for example, from Egypt to Jordan, the difference is smaller, perhaps, or Egypt to Sudan. Well, if you're from Upper Egypt, the difference from Upper Egypt to Sudan is smaller. Uh, but when you go, for example, from Egypt to Iraq or from Syria to Tunisia, these are such there is really quite there can be quite a sound change. So it depends on whom you're listening to, I guess. Yeah, but I kind of agree with you that Farsi has and French have this ah sound, ah,
Mhm.
and Arabic is more ah. There's a
Mhm.
different quality often to some of the vowels, and especially to the a vowel. So oh, and yes, Farsi has this very yeah, rounded, soft sound. I agree. It does sound that way to me too, and French to an extent also. But I guess it depends on which country you're in and which subset in the country. I mean, Egypt has several dialects, and uh, yeah, it's not one monolithic uh, entity.
Sure. In the book, you touch base on 125 words, but in fact, there are many, much more. It's just way much more words that we are explaining in each essay. So, do we have? Do you know how many words you of Arabic you are explaining in this book?
No, we didn't count. We
Yes,
didn't count.
probably. It's
I'm
quite a
glad.
lot.
I'm glad that you felt that because that is the idea that yes, each little body part has this big constellation of derivatives, and so if you know asab, and then you can guess about asabi and ta'asaba and muta'asib, and if you know ras, you have Ra'is and Ri'asa and Ra'isi and Ra'asa and so forth. So each one little word gets you a lot of mileage. And the real clue to using that link is the metaphor. And I think that might be the most important feature of the book is that each body part has or each body root, I should say, has an associated metaphor. And you can't really know until you look at all of the derivatives. And when you see them all together, you can guess. It becomes clear to you. For example, when you see rahim, the womb, and then you see rahma and al-marhum and ar-rahman ar-rahim, you can understand that the womb and mercy is the metaphor behind the womb, and that the metaphor behind ras is the principle, the head, what shall we say? So the rais, so the president, the head, the person in charge, the chef. It's exactly the chef. That is the metaphor that's associated with it. And for example, the jaw, a really, really fun one is the jaw in Arabic is fek. And al-fek is associated, coming from it are fekka, which means change. For example, if I give you $100 bill and you give me 100 ones, that's fekka. And mifek is a screwdriver. In English, when I think of a screwdriver, I think of something to put things together, to screw things together. But in Arabic, the image is to take things apart, to unscrew them. And so fakka is the division, the chopping up of one big bill into little change. And the mifek is the instrument by which you take something apart. And tafkik idharra is splitting the atom. So it is atomic fission. So what is the jaw for? It's to chop things up into little pieces. And all of the vocabulary that comes out of the jaw is about dismemberment. It's, it's what the shark, it's what Jaws does to that poor swimmer, is swimming up above him. So yes, dismemberment. And once you make that association, you have a student who doesn't have a huge vocabulary, has a way, an image to retain, and a hope that that image will help them make good guesses about what the other derivatives might mean.
Yeah, I wish I had the image of FAC to show, but so here's the deal. People want to know, they need to go and buy the book and see and read the book. Excellent. Thank you so much. Stay put with me. You are watching and listening to Peace Mindedly, a podcast show featuring peaceful bridge makers. For this hour, we talked with Lisa White, author of Rooted in the Body and illustrated by Mahmoud Shaltut. I just want to show you the book. It was my notes to just, bring and skim through when we were talking about the words, but this is the book, and it's a fascinating read. The signature for our show is we usually ask our guests to share something meaningful about peace, about kindness and compassion. That can be a nostalgic childhood story, can be a poem, can be a statement, can be anything that they are interested to share with us. And it seems that I didn't explain fully to Lisa, previously, but I'm just curious to know what Lisa has for us. Okay, Lisa.
Okay, so I will say that language is the best vehicle for peace. If you can speak someone else's language, you have the hope of communicating, of really communicating with them, and it's a kind of, I think for me anyway, language is a kind of addiction, but it's the best kind of addiction. It's a never-ending open buffet. non-fattening.
That's why
And
you
there's
said it's
always,
delicious.
yes, it is. And there's always something new on the menu. So my feeling about it is that there's an Uber chef, the chef, which is the whole society. Society is like this language engine. It's like a giant Google, but it's the society that creates kind of language. And then there's you and me, the little sous chefs, who are adding their pieces, their little bits, and together somehow it gets mixed in and creates this amazing, amazing vehicle for our feelings and our hopes and our desires. And certainly, we all, I think, desire a more peaceful world, one with a better focus, a truer focus on the deep meaning of culture and the things that people share, not the things that separate them.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much for this conversation. Rooted in the Body by Lisa White. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you very much.
خدا حافظ.
خدا